all these different levels. And I think it's right. I think we do have a lot of corruption in the system, but I think this has morphed now into what we know as critical race theory, right? This kind of neo-Marxism, critical race theory that is taking has the fruits of it has really started to disintegrate society in a sense. So we're seeing and we're observing the fruits of these philosophical systems right now in kind of the real world, and you can feel the absence of any positive life affirming philosophies, which I did not find in any of the critical theoretical studies. Postmodernism is anathema. Metaphysical structures and meaning as such are kind of bad words in the postmodern system, right? Because they're there to disassemble systems, metaphysical systems, and all truth is relative. So this idea of absolute truth, this idea that there is truth in the world, is anathema to the critical theory in a sense, right? So, but I don't think that's the case. And again, obviously finding orthodoxy with which is the fullness of the truth, in a sense that we could unpack that to the best that we can if you want. But so critical theory and critical studies is critiquing the substructures of capitalism, late consumer capitalism, things of that nature.
Right. And would you say that this critical attitude is a consequence of what Nietzsche called the death of God, and this general move away from the coherent, completed worldview of Christianity into these more like a disassembled world of multiplicity and subjectivism and stuff like that?
Yeah, I would say that Nietzsche is called the father of postmodernism. I don't know how right that is for him to be called that, but definitely, when he was decreeing the death of God, he said, God is dead and we've killed him. Blood is on our hands. A lot of people look at that as he was saying that in a affirming way or a positive way, but he wasn't. He was warning people that you are disintegrating the very structure that you're standing on. In doing so, what are the ways out of it? And he came up with this idea of reevaluation of values and coming up with your own values and morals, which did not work out, cannot work out for I think obvious reasons. But I think a lot of it is rooted in kind of Nietzsche and the deconstruction movement. That came about from his work for sure.
Right. And I think when Nietzsche's idea of building an affirmative philosophy after the death of God, I think it's really tied in with, well, for one, his rejection of Christianity, and also his embrace of Dionysius. And I remember in one of your videos, you were talking about how I think it was you were reading from Rene Girard, and he was talking about how Nietzsche misunderstood Dionysius, and actually the Dionysian principle represents the rabble and the mob, essentially the slave, if we can call it that class, which, for example, the same rabble that would stone the harlot. Meanwhile, in Christianity, we represent the ethical agent, which is shows mercy and forgiveness. And we could also relate this to Hegel, who refers to these ancient pagan feasts and rituals as embodying the consciousness of mere sense certainty, which is the beginning of the phenomenology, while Christianity is properly spirit and ethical substance. So I was wondering if you could go into your critique of Nietzsche's critique of Christian quote unquote slave morality and Dionysius and the Dionysian principle.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. And I think it's important to identify that, Nietzsche's dad was a Protestant preacher, Hegel was a Christian, and the Christianity that they were critiquing, in the 18th, 19th century, around that time, their critiques were accurate. That's the strange thing, because the Christianity of the time was this kind of moralistic, nominalistic type of institutional Christianity that was infected with a type of Christianity. And I also think that Nietzsche's critiques and even the postmodern critiques are actually what will lead us to a reappropriation of an authentic Christianity, right? Which I couch it in terms of orthodoxy. But when you say orthodoxy, people say, I don't want to think of Orthodoxy as one sect of Christianity among others, and then to say that this one particular sect is right to the detriment of all the others, which are false, is what's right here. So it's kind of hard to make that kind of demarcation there. But I think that Nietzsche was critiquing kind of his society when he was seeing and the consequences of this degenerative form of Christianity. And I'm not saying that Protestantism is inherently degenerative. I'm not, judging anybody to be a Protestant or Calvinist or whatever it may be. But I think what he was critiquing was kind of accurate. And I don't know that he had access really to Orthodoxy or to the church fathers. I've never read him critique or talk through any of their insights or any of their works. But he was, he understood the Christian story probably better than any Christian at the time. And he was an atheist in a sense. And Girard talks about this idea that when, Nietzsche realized that the Christian story is true, that kind of sparked his madness, in a sense, and kind of made him go mad. So I would really, really recommend, if this type of information or this type of discourse interests, your subscribers, to really get into Rene Girard. And on my YouTube channel, I just did a video yesterday actually on kind of Rene Girard 101. And I have a video, a series of about 16 or 19 videos reading from, Rene Girard's I See Satan Fall Like Lightning. Rene Girard was a former atheist. He was born in 1925. He was a French postmodern psychoanalyst. He was an anthropologist. And then he became Christian, right, through his looking through the traditions and getting in, reading the Bible kind of through his lens. He actually converted to Christianity, Catholicism. And it's interesting to go on that journey with him. And then his insights and his critique of Nietzsche are really wonderful and have been important to me in finding and really legitimately finding orthodoxy and being able to make it coherent within, my philosophical kind of intellectual upbringing. Like Marshall McLuhan is another very smart, intelligent, human being that, found, Christianity as well. I know you're into Lewis, G.K. Chesterton. A lot of these thinkers I would not, entertain because I thought of them as Christian. And I'm like, what do they have to offer? What do they have to offer? So it's like everything but Christianity is fun to explore, whether it's Eastern mysticism, Buddhism, Zen, Taoism, Native American, religions, Nordic, everything except Christianity. So it's interesting that that's kind of where we're at. And I think that speaks to the idea of the death of God, because God can't really die in a sense. It's our belief in God that has died. And without a belief in in some absolute to presuppose civilization, it will crumble. And that's what he was saying. And that's what's happened. I don't know what you think. Do you see that this is a degenerative force in terms of civilization?
Oh yeah, I would say definitely it is, primarily because in the Christian worldview, like people don't really think about this too often, but in the Middle Ages, for example, there was no real serious debate over the nature of reality, right? Like you had a story of how the world worked, right? But when you get, I think this goes hand in hand with individualism and liberalism, you get this, like you literally fracture the world into different subjective interpretations, right? And that's what Nietzsche, I think, was talking about by perspectivism and perspective. You only have your own perspective because there's no overarching worldview or anything like God giving a absolute, consistency to reality. So, yeah, like I would definitely agree that, with the death of God, the biggest problem with it is in terms of the worldview and the coherence of the worldview is you lose the worldview. You get just a multiplicity of different atomized subjective perspectives.